Which company has the best developers, Amazon, Google, or elsewhere? You accidentally leaked that internal memo trashing Google+. Was that actually an accident or the best career move you've ever made? What was the exact moment you realized Google had lost its way? You claim AI gives you a 30% minimum boost in productivity. Why are engineers still coding like it's 2010? Are you basically calling most programmers dinosaurs? You've been working on your own game, Wyvern, for nearly 25 years. Is it ever going to actually be done? He joined Amazon in 1998 when they had 250 employees. Jeff Bezos begged him to stay, but then he left to spend 13 years at Google building systems for code intelligence. He briefly retired after being the CTO of Grab until AI pulled him back in. Steve Yegge is the engineer whose accidental 3,700-word Google rant became Silicon Valley legend, and who now claims he can write 12,000 lines of production code per day using AI agents. He says most programmers today are dinosaurs using Stone Age tools, that Cursor and your IDE are already obsolete, and that within 5 years, traditional coding will be completely dead. This is the man who just wrote a book called Vibe Coding because he believes programming has become so addictive with AI, he literally can't stop. This is my conversation with Steve Yegge. Thanks, Steve, for coming by the studio. I felt like when I joined Amazon was when you left Amazon. And so I've always sort of seen and felt the echoes of your work throughout my career.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. No, it's kind of odd to sort of like hear somebody in the abstract, maybe a rant on your blog or something like that, but then finally be able to have a conversation in real life. So I appreciate you making the time.
Hey, my pleasure.
So let's talk about your career. I think my viewers are really interested in nonlinear paths for careers. And so, there's what would look like from the outside, the linear part. So working at Amazon, going to Google, being a senior staff there, going to Grab to be the CTO, that looks like a pretty straight line. But what's the origin story for you?
I was kind of nonlinear just I finished high school when I was 14. I wound up going to community college for a while, and then I went into the Navy and as a nuclear reactor operator. And while I was there, I went to the University of Washington, and I eventually found my way to this company called GeoWorks that was in the Bay Area that did assembly language for, handheld phones back in the day, handheld devices. And it was pretty nonlinear up to that point, and then it got real linear. It was just super basic. I was an engineer, and then I was an engineering lead, and then I went to Amazon, and I was a technical program manager, right? So that was probably the first nonlinear jump. Was like Amazon convinced me to go into a different role than I was applying for. They actually fought during my interview loop, right? Because I had apparently done a good enough job on my fourth try of applying with a resume that they cared about. Because it really wasn't the first time I applied to Amazon that they got me in. And part of it was my fault. I used to call it my $1 million mistake. It's more like a $1 billion mistake now. But my very first resume that I submitted to Amazon said right at the top and really clearly, all separated from the rest of the resume, objective, obtain a position at IBM. And so, it's weird. I didn't hear back from them. So anyway, I eventually got in, and I eventually got a role there as a technical program manager. But that was all dark ages for my career before I started blogging or anything. It was, I was learning the ropes, being a team lead and learning what's difficult about that, all the kind of traditional standard stuff. And the only thing that's really super nonlinear, I think, about my origin story is that I bounce back and forth a lot between leadership and individual contributor roles.
How did you make that? Well, actually, let's step back. Amazon was a startup, pre-IPO, post-IPO, that sort of boundary area right there. What made you want to apply there and maybe put IBM on your resume? But what made you want to apply to this small bookstore in Seattle? Did you see something from the outside that other people didn't?
Well, a buddy of mine, Ron Bronstein, who worked at GeoWorks with us, just upped and disappeared one day. He said, later, guys, I'm going to Amazon. And we were like, what? So he was quite the early bird. And it was really interesting because there were some maybe 20, maybe close to 30 of us in the Seattle office at the time. And little did any of us know that about 26 of those 30 would wind up at Amazon within 6 months. right? Amazon turned around and like me and Ron and a couple of the other folks who had jumped ship so much, they went and hired all the other 26, bought a bunch of GeoWorks stock as part of the trade. GeoWorks stock went way up. 2 or 3 people made a lot of money. The rest was a trail of tears for everybody who had shares in that company. Yeah. The usual. But yeah, that was pretty nonlinear. Talk about surreal. Like walking the halls of your new employer and seeing all of your old colleagues there, like walking the halls as well. I mean, just the cognitive disconnect there, you'd be surprised, right, at how heavy it is. But yeah, it was like Amazon was turning into a sort of a gravitational black hole. You can tell when those are happening. We have a few of them around us now. Anthropic is a gravitational black hole, right? Everybody wants to go there. Everybody's going there, right? It's like, it's quite prestigious to go there now. Google was like that, and that was why I left to go to Google, why I left Amazon. Amazon was on a roll, and I was on a roll. I was doing secret projects for Jeff Bezos. Like, I had lunch with him, and I was reporting to him on this work that I was doing, and I was like, I was out of there because we had a bunch of interns, and I was the guy that would keep the interns at the company. I was the one who would like close the deal to get them to choose us instead of whoever. And I had a great perfect record, and then one day the intern started going to Google, and I was like, why? And then I dug into it a little bit. And once you dig into it, you realize there's an event horizon. You're gonna go. You get sucked once you realize why they're going, because it was like it was the pilgrimage destination for tenured professors from all the best schools in the country, and the elite, cream of the crop, AI researchers and all these other folks, showing up there, and they had completely redefined what it meant to like take care of their employees and to encourage innovation through incentives rather than disincentives. And it was a magical time. It was clearly a golden age happening there. A similar golden age happened at Microsoft in the 90s in their tools division, just explosion of it. And all those people were showing up at Google the year that I went. That's how I could tell. Keep an eye out for those. Like, the number one thing you got to know for your career is like which company you're going to go to and tie yourself to, and in what role, right? Like, if you could get a job at Anthropic right now, sweeping up the elephant poop at their circus, that would be a better job than going to like most big tech companies right now, because you'd get those pre-IPO shares, and Anthropic is going to be absolutely gigantic, right?
Absolutely. I'm super interested about this transition from TPM. So TPM's a technical project manager, program manager. I don't even know what the P stands for sometimes, to engineering, which is, they're both technical roles, but one's a builder and one's, I think, maybe more of a coordinator. And so you were able to climb the engineering and tech ladder to essentially the highest levels. But the origin stories as a TPM, like, how did that lateral move work for you?
Okay, so you've asked a question that I could probably spend 5 hours talking about, so I'm going to have to be careful and selective, all right? Because it was a really interesting role. I did it for a year. Some of the highlights were I got to meet all of the leaders in the company, because I was the one responsible for barking at them like a sheepdog to get them all to go one direction, right? Because this was Amazon's solution before Two Pizza Teams came along as a better solution, but the generic solution that Amazon came up with for cross-functional coordination, which is to say cramming a bunch of new work through the throats of people who are already very busy with the work that you've given them before, right? Maintaining their systems that are under a lot of load and stress, and making them do new stuff, right? That's hard, and most companies struggle a lot with that. And Amazon's solution was to get very, very technical people who had some leadership skills, who could come in and like call BS on teams that are like, no, we can't do it because X, Y, Z. And the TPM would look at it and go, well, actually, I could do that tonight if I wanted to. And they'd be like, right? And so that was my role. I actually shepherded Amazon from a 2-tier architecture, if you've ever heard of that, where they literally got tools that are writing and reading directly to the Oracle database, to an N-tier architecture where I worked with, Shell and Eric Benson and all the whole team there of principals to migrate us to an N-tier architecture. And what did that mean? And I had to run around and fix 400 customer service command line tools that were doing like joins on tables that were like leaving goodbye. They were going to other instances, and we weren't going to do two-phase commit, right? Amazon was about speed. So that was a horrible, horrible migration, and Santa wasn't going to come if I didn't succeed. So they had a lot riding on this, and they entrusted me with it. Yeah. And I tell you, boy, that experience, right? It just preps you for project management and people interactions, and sort of like, smoothing the way forward for delivery, right? Learning how to deliver things as a TPM, and it's one that I've recommended to people. A buddy of mine, Kalen at SourceGraph, he just finished a 1.5 year long stint as a technical program manager at SourceGraph because I saw that he had the aptitude for it, and he loved it. And he learned all these skills and everything. And now he's back in engineering again, but he's an engineer who has a TPM hat. This is kind of like my brother Dave used to deliver pizza, and he said that as an outcome of that, he developed what he called his ninjutsu skills, which was just like these amazing driving skills where you can park your car anywhere because you have to get the pizza to these people and there's nowhere to park, so you'll be on the lawn or whatever. And so like that skill came in like in handy later in life, just being able to like drive like a pizza delivery guy, right? And that's what a TPM is kind of like, just driving absolutely crazy around the company trying to get stuff done without crashing.
I'm reminded of, I don't know if it's Parkinson's law, something like that, where the time to accomplish a task grows to how much you have allotted to it. But I really think that like creativity is like a really good input to creativity is constraint. Sometimes that constraint is time. And so, I give you an incredible deadline that's sort of unbelievable and looks impossible. Like making that happen, I think really starts to get the creative juices flowing.
You know what? That was a big difference between Amazon and Google since you were asking. Amazon would set just incredibly tight, ridiculous deadlines and then hold people's feet to the fire to get them done. Launch, get it in front of the customers, start iterating because we built the wrong thing slightly, let's fix it, that thing, right? Whereas Google was like, we're going to give you more money than you actually know what to do with if you deliver something that's really impactful. And they would. Right? I mean, like a lot of money, and we'll give you lots of opportunities to make an impact. We'll have this system that allows you to scale up infinitely if you just use our board configs, whatever. They give you all the infrastructure that you needed to build something great. And then Eric Schmidt tried to let 1,000 flowers bloom because they didn't know what the heck to do. They didn't know what to build. They had search and ads, and they had a nice thing locked up there, and they knew they were going to continue to expand that, and they needed to get new channels like YouTube and Chrome and wherever your eyeballs were, they needed to be, right? But they didn't know what to do. All of their cool stuff was acquisitions. Maps was an acquisition, oopsie. Gmail was an acquisition, oopsie. Google Docs, G Suite was an acquisition. I was there. It was called Rightly. It was written in C#. They ported it to Java.
Android.
Right. Android was an acquisition. Right. Chrome they built in-house to their credit, although they did it by stealing the WebKit browser for starters. So yeah, I mean, they didn't have taste. And this is so important. And the reason I'm talking about it is that in the future, the near future, like the next couple of years, the world is going to flip to where the people with taste are the ones who know what to do, the ones who have ideas in their head that people are going to like. They're going to rocket ahead because the difficulty of producing it is going to go so far down. And this was the difference between Amazon and Google. Was Amazon had a vision, and it was all from Bezos, right? And people could bring him visions and convince him on stuff. It wasn't like it all came from him, but he would synthesize what he wanted and pick it and go. And Google was like meandering. They were anemic when I got there, right? And they would launch things occasionally that were cool, but most of it was a big graveyard, right?
So you accidentally leaked that internal memo trashing Google+. Was that actually an accident or the best career move that you've ever made?
Why not both? I think that there's sufficient evidence in there that I didn't intend it for an external audience, especially the paragraph where I talk about Stubby. You don't know what Stubby is. Well, nobody knows what Stubby is. It's an internal Google service, but it was a cornerstone of my argument was that Google's famed Stubby service was not actually very good.
Was it some sort of locking thing, or?
That's Chubby. Stubby was effectively institutionalized gRPC, right?
Okay, great.
Sort of. It was our RPC. It was okay. It was good, but it wasn't what you needed, right? So, and was it a great career move? Well, it was sort of like really scary and terrifying at first. I kind of became, I was at the center of all the news cycles and everything for a while, and I just tried to sort of lay low and survive it. A lot of people became very interested in me and started, like famous people started flying in just to see me and meet me and talk to me, which was interesting. And they all came away disappointed because I'm actually quite boring in person. I was like rip roaring drunk when I wrote that platform's Rant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it was completely an accident, and the story of how I found out it was an accident later that night and everything is pretty legendary. I think I've recounted it here and there, but it was pretty scary. Now, strangely enough, right, over the next 10 years, it became like this thing of legend and myth, right? And I got blown up in people's minds like way bigger than I should be, right? Way bigger. And I cite as evidence, that I would go to, like, for example, Grab. I went to Grab. And they just assumed that I could just wave a magic wand and fix all their problems, right? Myself. Mm-hmm. And, it was pretty remarkable. People think that I'm some sort of giant, right? And so it's become a really difficult career problem for me. Right, as I have to go and I have to say, well, actually, I'm not really very good at anything. So can we talk? So yeah, but anyway, it was a good career move because ultimately it opened a lot of doors.
Before we dive back in, I want to talk about something that I think is game-changing for any development workflow. And honestly, it's one of those integrations that just makes sense. If you're using Linear for project management and Cursor for coding, which, let's be real, a lot of us are at this point, Linear just launched an integration that lets you assign a Linear issue directly to Cursor agents. Here's how it works. You've got an issue in Linear. Could be a bug fix or a small feature. Instead of assigning it to a teammate, you can now assign it straight to Cursor. A background agent spins up automatically and starts working on it, pulling in all of the context from your Linear issue so it knows exactly what you're asking for. You can track progress of the issue right from Linear. No jumping between tools, no manual updates. The agent feeds progress back into Linear as it works. And when it's done, it'll automatically update the issue with the pull request. I've been skeptical of a lot of AI coding tools, but this type of typed integration between your project management and your AI coding assistant, it actually reduces friction instead of adding to it, especially for those smaller tasks that sit in your backlog. The P2s and P3s that you know you need to get done, but aren't urgent enough to context switch for. If you're using both tools, it's definitely worth checking out. Head to linear.app/ALE to learn more. I'll also drop the link in the description. All right, let's get back to our conversation. So let's talk about like the rate of growth, right? So, I think 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, when the first ChatGPT came out, and I think the whole consciousness of the world was sort of, our frame about what AI could do was completely broken. The rate of change was absolutely astronomical with every version increase. And I do think that generally it seems a little logarithmic, right? If you had surveyed me last year on like the capability of an LLM, and then you told me what was going to be happening in July of 2025, where we happen to be right now, I would not be blown away in the same way that I was when the first GPTs came out. And and I think that a lot of the advances that we've seen are because these large companies are literally focusing their devs not on general intelligence, but specifically on things that would make software development faster and faster.
It depends on which frontier model provider you're talking about, right? Anthropic focuses pretty heavily on coding, and that's why they wind up being really good at it. OpenAI is focused really hard on trying to get personal assistance off the ground, right? So that you can have a real robotic assistant assisting you. And I wish them luck, right? I want one, that actually works. So, the way I see the rate of growth, what they've told us, like for example, Jason Clinton, who's the CISO at Anthropic, characterized it as, but I think even Musk has said this, right? It's not the architecture that needs to change. The architecture is fine. You can get a lot more out of it with better data. And that's what, or even better use of the same data, right? And that's where a lot of the innovation is going on right now. It's switching to from pre-training to inference time and all kinds of other tricks that they're doing. But fundamentally, it's all limited by context. You mentioned that law before. I think you said it might have been Parkinson's, but I'm not sure. Where innovation sort of expands to fill its container that you give it.
Time does, at least. That's
that happens with context windows too, as you're doing agentic coding. Which is why you have to. One of the really important key themes of our book is that you have to decompose decompose tasks into the smallest possible conceptual move forward that you could have the thing make, because it will fill the entire context window with that task as it tries to do a really thorough job of it. And so if you give it too much, it'll try really hard on the first one, have no space left over again, and start making panicked decisions, right, for the rest of the session, and it'll wind up with a bunch of hacks, right? So so anyway, around this growth, we do think that there are 2 more cycles left in the 4x doubling. So we're going to see 16x smarter LLMs, just given the amount of data that we know is available. And after that, we don't know what happens. It could actually get slow way down, at which point we're there, we arrived, AI is what it is, and we now need to learn how to harness it. Just like electricity and steam aren't super friendly when you first, invent them, but you eventually put things around them to make the power, usable. We're going to do the same thing with AI. The other alternative, which I think maybe more people believe, is that AI itself will come in and start helping more with its development, and it will speed up at that point.
I do think that in terms of training, whatever is out there has been harvested in a sense, right? Like there's publicly available data, copyrighted works, and stuff that's out in the internet.
Whatever's out there has been harvested, except for the stuff the private data sets that everybody has. And that's today's gold. That's today's oil.
Yeah, exactly. That was the point I was going to make.
That stuff hasn't been harvested yet, but everyone's trying to get their hands on it. And there's going to be a lot of data sales, backroom deals, stealing, piracy, you name it, right? Model distillation. Everybody is trying to get everybody else's data, because as soon as you have all the data, you have the smartest AI in the world.
Absolutely. I think that or at least you'll be able to see some of the increases that we were seeing in the past from the training side. But at the end of the day, I think, there will be backroom deals. All of this data will be aggregated and sold, but it's not going to be on the order of the stuff that's publicly available unless you...
I heard it's about the same size.
Okay.
There's about as much hidden out there as we've found publicly. A rough estimate.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but that's what I heard.
Well, I mean, a doubling of it doesn't, I don't think necessarily imply that it would...
It's better quality though, right? It's not just a bunch of random internet trolls. It's like actual, customer usage data and programming data and stuff.
Fortran comments.
Right. It's a bunch of logs from companies that were tracking like useful stuff.
Absolutely. And then I think on the inference side of things, or the test time side of things, inferences and attention is it's a very expensive operation, right? And so you're paying for the compute, and that compute comes from power. And so, you can say, we are compute constrained. Oh, we're power constrained. We are constrained, however you want to sort of look at it. And from what I understand, these $200 a month Claude Code things, the $200 a month, O3 or 3.0 reasoning model from OpenAI, the $300 Groks, those are all loss leaders, from what I understand. And so the price for this frontier is very expensive. Maybe I'm going back on what I was saying when I was challenging you on price. And so how long can these companies go with this loss leader thing when everybody, all of their competitors are also losing money every time a new customer shows up?
I mean, you mentioned it earlier, right? That Anthropic's focusing on coding because they see the ROI there. It's there. Yeah. And where's the AI ROI for everybody else, other than Business Insider, who writes all their articles with it now and fired a bunch of their journalists, and probably customer service departments are making bank, I would guess, with AI. But other than that, what use case has changed the world yet? And it's because it's unreliable still, right? Maybe it doesn't happen for a while. I mean, so everybody's expecting it's a bubble that's going to burst, actually. Everybody thinks, oh, well, because AI hasn't made any progress yet, and it feels like logarithmic growth, it's clear that it's just not ever going to get to where people will say it's going to be, right? And, we saw really similar arguments about all that shit with compilers back in the day. Compilers will never be as smart as a human being at writing assembly language. Pretty quickly, compilers were much, much better than human beings because of parallel architectures and things that humans just
They can unroll a loop, and they do all a bunch of crazy stuff.
Yeah, all kind of crazy stuff, right? And, it's just denial. Just people are in denial. They're scared and whatever. But it's happening. The power consumption is going to be a problem. I hope that they get nuclear, fusion working pretty quickly, right?
Well, you want to put a date on that,
Well, everything everything's going to get faster exponentially. Everything, not just computing, right? All technology building is going to start getting exponentially faster. But I mean, the takeaway here is that, right, stuff's getting built, and that means there's jobs, and that means there's opportunities, and that means you can go out and find one of those things and actually do it, right? But you have to just recognize and accept right now and swallow it is that you are going to be working with an AI to do your job from now on, and the AI is going to be very good at your job, but you're going to be the human backstop that gives it the taste and the big picture and whatever else it needs to keep it going the right direction, right? That's how life works now for knowledge work.
I absolutely agree. You know, maybe I started from a place of denialism, you know, I'll admit it for sure. But I do think that if you don't embrace AI, you will be the equivalent of like the digital Amish.
Yeah. I mean, you are, right? You're a Luddite. It's funny. I was in denial as recently as January. Yep, January of this year. So that
6 months ago.
6 months ago, I was in complete denial when I heard that coming out of Anthropic was no, not coming out of Anthropic. It was just inside of Anthropic. In Anthropic, the engineers, they're using some command line tool to write code, and they don't use IDEs anymore. And my response was, and I quote, "No," right? I mean, no, just straight up. No, I mean, how much more emphatic could you get of a denial? And as soon as I started using it, I was like, all right, I'm just going to undelete my IDEs to free up some space and delete my IDEs. I mean,
no, absolutely. So let's talk about your book on vibe coding.
Sure.
So there's when LLMs first came out into the public consciousness, there was this idea that prompt engineering might be a new art. And what we realized was that these models are shifting so much, both in terms of capability, but also like what types of inputs yield what types of outputs, that we can't really, it's a shifting sand sort of thing. I don't think prompt engineering is how anybody describes it. But when you talk about vibe coding, tell me what the difference between vibe coding or 300 pages on vibe coding is versus like being a glorified prompt engineer. Like, what's the delta there?
Well, I mean, like fundamentally, prompt engineering, in my mind, is, and I'm going by Chip Wynn's definition from the O'Reilly AI engineering book, which is very good. Prompt engineering is all about building static, long-lived prompts that will be resilient over model changes and version changes and things, right? That embed AI into your application, AI capabilities, right? So the prompt might be, teaching it to be a really good customer service rep for your company or something. That's prompt engineering. You need eval suites, all that stuff. Whereas vibe coding is all about dynamic, in-the-moment crafting prompts. Maybe you spend 15 or even 45 minutes crafting the prompt for the very first project for the work stream or whatever. But ultimately, you're just making conversation, right? And you're course correcting as you go. So it's really very different.
Got it. So it's less about the particular interaction that you're trying to bottle and more about having that conversation and hopefully getting to a useful endpoint.
That's right. That's right.
So it's just the number of pages just like blows my, so 300 pages of how to have a conversation with an LLM in order to achieve, some sort of like coding aim. Like, what's the foundational element there, right? Like, what's the core atom?
Yeah. Well, I mean, my blogs tend to be about 200 pages, and I couldn't fit it in a blog, right? I tried really hard to fit it in a blog. I wrote several blogs that were 30 pages, and I couldn't do it. It just wasn't even scraping the surface. So there's a lot to talk about, and it's because things are really different. Like Cursor, for example, is like really hot right now, okay? Really hot, which is really funny because Cursor is just, Cursor... you know what? I paid for Cursor and I installed it and I used it for a while and it was really cool. And then February came, right?
February of this year, the month after your denial.
The month after my denial, February came and everything changed. And Cursor had suddenly gone from really a very clever, smart business model to a business model that I have a lot of concerns about, right? Because they cannot afford to give you fully autonomous agentic coding with unlimited tokens, right? I mean, that's not their... I don't want to go too much into it, but I worry for them. I will say that, look, if you're using Cursor right now, and you probably love it, right? You're using like last year's technology, yeah? And you should be using, Cloud Code, or my personal favorite, SourceGraph AMP, which is just rocketing up in popularity, and it's awesome for a lot of reasons, or OpenAI Codex, right? Or I've heard maybe Amazon Q Developer, but I haven't looked at it yet. And
Well, they just came out with this Cairo.
or Cairo, maybe it's Cairo.
Yeah.
Yeah. But everyone's coming out with like real agents, and when I say real, I specifically mean they're command line based and there's no IDE, which really, really, really bothers a lot of people for obvious reasons.
Well, I mean, you're an Emacs guy. I'm a Vim guy. And
So we're both really cool.
yeah, but the command line is that's my like, body temperature water that I'm floating in.
This might actually explain why so many people are coming out of retirement with the AI stuff, with the agentic coding, right? Because they're all comfortable with command lines, right? Command lines are just really natural for those of us who were programming in the 80s and 90s. So real unnatural for people today. And look, the skill set has changed. Why is the book 300 pages? Look, what's the takeaway, really, for real? There's a couple, okay? Probably the high order bit is that you're not a programmer anymore. You're a team lead, okay?
Yeah.
You're not writing code anymore. You're literally the team lead for a bunch of coders who can do amazing things or really stupid things. They kind of do them in equal proportions, and you as the team lead, it's your job to make sure that the right things get done and get through, right? That's a completely different job. It involves different skills. It involves like different Git skills even. You're going to use a lot more Git branching and merging, and yet a lot less of it because the AI will do it all for you, right? But you're walking this really fine line. Also, look, another high order bit is like this is a tool. Ultimately, it's a collaborator, and you need to treat it as a collaborator and collaborate with it like a pair programmer. But ultimately, it's a tool, and you're responsible for the outcomes. And you can't ever blame the AI for anything. That's like blaming a hammer for not hammering the nail in right. Okay. And then, another one is, modularity. I mean, like if you're a company, like our part 4 is all about companies and how to build teams and organizations and systems that are AI amenable. And modularity sits at the heart of it, right? Because they only have their cognitive tendrils are only so long, and their context windows are only so long. And in order to fit the information that they need to be able to think big and make the right decisions about your system, if it's too big of a monolith, even just that information is already filling the context window, so it can't do any thinking at all. So companies that have embraced monoliths or failed to break up into microservices all these years because it was never quite worth it, you're all going out of business. Not to be too spicy or anything.
So you talked about how the AI isn't replacing the developer, more that it's creating a new type of team, and then the programmer is now the team lead. How does that work for junior developers who have never... So you can't just become a team lead, I think. I think there's some amount, at least today, there's some amount of experience that you need to have that taste, to understand how projects go off the rails, to understand what the right way to do things is, or at least one of the right ways to do things, and to make these big choices about where the code is going to go. And so there seems to be a discontinuity between, say, getting out of school, with your computer science degree, and becoming a team lead. Maybe 5 to 10 years of experience. Like that's just sort of like an empty space.
No, I hear you. Look, I think fundamentally the way people get educated at universities, get computer science education is going to change from being focused heavily on teaching people coding to being focused on teaching people engineering.
Yeah.
Okay, because ultimately that's what you're talking about, right? Is coming out with the sort of judgment that you need to be able to say, are these systems modular enough and decoupled enough, and are they resilient enough, and all these things that you typically learn later in life as a senior engineer, you're going to have to learn right up front now. Okay, so if you're a college student now, or you just finished or whatever, start learning that stuff, right? Lean on AI to start learning that stuff, because ultimately that's what you've got to do as a team lead. Now, look, you don't have to learn. It's not like you're a team. You're not leading a team of humans, and that means about 50% of the BS that you have to deal with as a team lead is just not an issue. Right? For example, you can work them to death and they'll never die. Right? The AIs, not the humans, and so on. Right? I mean, it's like you can give them the same task 500 times if you don't like it, and they'll just keep doing it. Right? So it's a little, and they won't complain about how their pet sitters not there today or whatever, But you're going to run into all of the team-related stuff, not the people stuff. You're going to relate, the thing you mentioned earlier about how sometimes your systems may be set up so that they overlap and people step on each other. If you're organized that way, your AI agents will step on each other too. You're going to have merges to deal with, right? I mean, you're going to have agents that depend on each other because they're sequencing problems. I had one last night. I was like, okay, well, I want you to make this change, but I got to have this other agent finish its thing first. So you're just going to idle for now, right? These are all skills that you can start learning early on in high school or sooner. They're all very different from the way programming has worked historically, which is single-threaded. You pick one project at a time, you dive into it, and you solve it yourself, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's gonna be different, but I mean that's the way things are headed.
So if you see the new junior developer over time needing the skills of today's senior engineers, but you've also made the prediction that there will be more software developers net in the future. Like, what are junior engineers doing then?
Yeah, so great question. Junior engineers will no longer be the juniorest engineers. There is another class of engineers, or several below junior engineer now, that are also vibe coding. Okay, product managers, UX designers, sales, marketing, finance, analysts. They're all writing software. And they need a trained engineer, that's you, junior engineer, yeah, to come in and review their stuff. So there's a new ecosystem. It's like I compared it to a gig economy a couple of times, I think maybe with Yegge, but right? I see like a more of an on-demand type of rent an engineer for a review type thing, rent a PM for a review. How often do you really need a product manager on your project? You need it at specific times, like to review the PRD and then maybe to review before launch and so on, right? But ultimately, I think people will be able to share more with this model. And junior engineers will have a vibrant and thriving role there because you're a trained engineer. And they're going to come in and be like, we tried Python because we read on the internet that Python's cool. Can you look at our service to see if it has everything it needs? And as a junior engineer, you're going to be like, well, it could probably use whatever, a database or a config file or security or whatever it's missing, right? It'll be missing something, and you'll be a hero. Yeah, that's the way I see it unfolding.
Absolutely insane. Awesome. Did you want to talk a little bit about, was it Source Graph?
Oh, our AMP CLI product. Yeah, look, command line interfaces, they're all going to kind of look alike to you because GUIs can be very visually distinctive. But if you're just looking at text, there's only so many ways they can sort of lay it out in your terminal, right? Why would you code in a terminal? I think a lot of people still don't fundamentally understand that, right? It's a skill, right? It takes some practice. It takes maybe some training. We wrote a 300-page book about it. It's not easy, and we did not want to write. Our publisher, right, that told us it couldn't be more than 250. So already, right, this is a hard new space, but you got to get into it, right? You got to get in there and pick one. And my feeling is that AMP is more team friendly. AMP is super it makes all the threads public, so you can go see what your friends are up to, and it has all these leaderboards, like who burned the most tokens today, and who had the longest conversation, who likes their LLM the most, all this stuff, right? Who argued the most, whatever. You can have arbitrary leaderboards, which suddenly makes it super fun because now everybody can kind of see what you're doing, right? It's like the Strava of coding, if that makes any sense. Yeah, and that was unexpected. That was an unexpected, sort of benefit of AMP. AMP also does a really, really good job with subagents now. So it avoids filling up the context window by reaching a point and saying, oh, we're going to have to go look at 45 different test files for this pattern. I'm going to spin up a subagent, and it's going to go do it all, report the results back to me. We'll throw all that context away, and we only ate up 1% of context instead of 15.
Oh, so you gave the budget for the subagent.
It just gets its own context window. So it's an agent managing an agent, right?
Got it.
And that's like the very first baby step in the direction of someday you're not going to be working directly with these coding agents. You're going to be working with an agent's agent. And it's necessary because the way it works today is you're sitting down with somebody who's just never quite right. They're really smart, right? I'm so sorry I'm fidgeting now, but vibe coding is so addictive. It's beyond addictive. If I sit down and I'm like, okay, I'm going to look at my agents, I know that the clock will go zzz, right on the wall. I'll look up and it'll be 9 o'clock and I'll be like, what happened? And it's because you get into these conversations with them and they're so smart and yet they need your guidance, okay? Because they're just going to go the wrong way and they get so much done and yet it's so little because your ambition goes way up. That's one of the other A's, ambition and FAFO, okay? And so it's just a new world, but you can't stop doing it, right? It's like Kent Beck told me a couple months ago, he's like, this is like being on a toboggan going down a ski slope. It ain't like skis. Okay, it's a toboggan. You can kind of steer it, but you're never really in control of it, right? And you're not, right? You're really not. You can't control what the AI is going to do. You can just tell it what you want it to do, right? And that just getting over that hump is just it's going to affect, I don't know, however many tens of millions of programmers there are in the world today. They're all going to have to learn this new way of doing things.
Like this control that we're giving away. We basically, if you think about imperative programming and if-then statements, and that's how I think a lot of people that aren't technical sort of think about AI. They think there's some sort of like man in there or this big like decision tree that's sort of like spitting all this stuff out, when in reality, we don't really know what's going on, right? We trained it with all of these things, and we rewarded it for the output that we liked, and then we punished it for the things that we didn't like. But nobody can go in there and say, like, you can't go in there and find the if statement that like gives you the output that you don't want to sort of tweak it. And so we've given away this control for this power that we can't quite yet wield in the right way. I feel also it's really hard to explain to people like the terminal interface. It just feels like it feels sort of biomechanical. Like when you're coding in a terminal versus like a really nice IDE that's written in JavaScript that has all these sort of like things that are built in. It's the wrong modality. Like I really feel like I'm a programmer, on a computer, and that I have this idea in my head, the spell that I want to cast. Like the spell itself is like it goes through the medium of the terminal. Right. And like that's really where I feel the most like a sorcerer programmer.
I mean, think about it this way. I mean, absolutely well said, right? I feel the same way. Look, I just recently realized that I am absolutely sick of programming on my computer. Okay. Now, who would have thought that would happen, right? But I need my agent work streams to move up into the cloud on dedicated VMs or throwaway VMs or whatever, but I need my environments with the agents and my repos and everything else up there because I want to work on my damn phone when I'm on the bus. And you actually have the ability to do that with this kind of coding.
Yeah.
You can code always. And it's so fun. It's so fun. It's stupidly fun. You don't get it. Like the people who are resisting it, they actually just don't get it yet.
It sounds like an amazing, like brave new world. Man, it's like instead of like scrolling on Reddit, I could just be there, just kind of, like building stuff.
I mean, like I was having a conversation this morning with an agent where I came in the morning and I was like, and it was like, okay, I added some more text processing whatevers. You have to look for these it tells you everything it does. It doesn't typically lie about what it does, right? But it grossly exaggerates the impact of what it does, right? And often it will also do really bad things, and it will just tell you casually, oh yeah, and by the way, I deleted your database too, just for fun, and you're like, what? So you have to be scanned. This is why I say you have to read fast, is because you have to really read every word that it says, especially in the summaries, so that you can spot when it's done something bad. And I was having a conversation this morning where I have a really simple architecture. You're only allowed to do one thing on the client side in my Emacs Genie. It is eval. Okay, no looking at my query to see if I said the word haiku or whatever hack you're doing in there, right? And it was doing completion detection by trying to figure it out itself. And I'm like, Claude, why don't you ask Claude? And it's like, oh yeah, I could do that, right? And so I had I had a very grown-up discussion with it about the approach that it was taking to the engineering problem of deciding when my tasks were finished from the agent, right? It was fun. It was rewarding. It was cool to be able to tell the LM and have it understand, oh yeah, I was doing something really dumb. This is better, and have it go off and come up with a plan for it. None of it was easy, and I'm mad that I let it go for 4 days in the wrong direction. Had I paying a little closer attention to that one agent, it wouldn't have built all that stupid hack stuff, right? I'm telling you though, like it's a never-ending source of fun and stories, and it's like sticking your head out the car window. I've been saying that a lot. Dogs, they get to sniff stuff, right? They like sniffing, and when you put them in a car and stick their head out the window, the smells come at them like so fast, and they're like, ah. That's what vibe coding is like with these agents.
It's like the Matrix for them.
It's so cool.
So like, I was going to ask you, but I think I got some of this question answered, which is like, you could just be retired. You just be putting your feet up on the table and, doing whatever you want to. What's pulling you back in?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I decided I want to live. I mean, like, kind of like, is one way to put it, right? A lot of people kind of give up when they hit my age, right? They're like, I'm kind of done. I'm going to go fish or whatever. And for some people, that is living, but a lot of people don't know what they want to do. I have all kinds of stuff I've loved to do, but suddenly, like I'm a musician, for example, right? But suddenly, AI completely rekindled like all of my ambitions around everything, right? Because like now all of a sudden, you ask me in the spicy questions, is Wyvern ever going to be finished? Wyvern, thanks to Geralt of Rivia, I learned how to pronounce it correctly. Is it ever going to be finished? Well, no, games are never finished. Your fan base will tell you that immediately. They always want more features. Will it actually get going again is the question. And the answer is yes. I had just basically more or less shut it down because I just couldn't do what the players wanted me. I couldn't keep up. I'm pretty fast at coding, but they wanted everything every day, right? But now it's all kind of back on the table. And it's like, oh, wow, I can get a lot done. And my contributors, my team, that's been working with me for a decade, they all can use AI now too. So we're all super fast. And so now we can sit back at the game and say, wow, what if I re-envision this in modern terms? Like, what would I do to build like a Stardew Valley type of an experience out of the game engine that I've created, right?
Yeah.
And it's right. And so that's why I'm out of retirement, because I can ask questions like that and be like, I could get that done in addition to a bunch of other cool stuff. I couldn't have done that using an IDE typing out code. You have no idea how much more ambitious you can be. And ultimately, you don't care about the code. You think you do, right? But when I was in computer graphics, I cared a lot about polygons in 1991, 1992. You don't care about polygons, I promise you. You care about facial expressions. You care about combat systems. You care about experiences and adventures and quests. You don't care about Z buffering, okay? It's obvious now 30 years later, but at the time, everybody was like, couldn't let go of the graphics primitives that they had all learned, right? But seriously, we are building experiences. We're not building code. So get that stupid idea out of your head right now and start thinking about how to build experiences with AI as an engineer. Yeah.
So it sounds to me you're coming back because there are so many more things that are on the menu than were on the menu when you were thinking about hanging up your keyboard.
Absolutely. I mean, programming is, we talk about this in the book. We spend a lot of part one on this. Programming has just become miserable. I programmed in the 80s and in the 90s. And yeah, we can get a lot more done now than we used to, right? Many, many, many orders of magnitude. But the amount of work that you have to do to get something basic done today is much higher, right? And just think about like what you have to do to set up a typical modern web app and how many frameworks you're going to have to bring in and how many competing dependencies you'll have and all this stuff, right? It's we talk about it in the book. It's pretty horrible. Why is programming getting gradually worse? Because to me, it really feels like, even though we're getting more and more and more powerful, there's so many libraries and so many frameworks and so many practices and so many this and so many that, you can't even just sort through it all, right? There's fragmentation. I think AI is going to smooth all that out. It's going to reduce the amount of specialists that we have. It's going to increase the amount of generalists that we have. It's going to make all of our software, I think better, just because of the market effects.
I do think that we're still trying to figure out the ergonomics.
Yep.
Right. And it's just this weird thing where people are just going off on these weird directions and then they're like, oh, well, actually, that's really clunky. We're going to go back this way.
And the ergonomics, you can be a one-way door, right? If you choose to be inside of an IDE, you may have tied yourself to an IDE that's an anchor, a boat anchor. Yeah. If you tie yourself to a particular model, you got to be real careful which model you tie yourself to, right? You can make a lot of decisions that seem really good, and then 6 months later, everything just turns upside down, yeah? So being scrappy and aggressive has been one thing that's been really successful for us at SourceGraph, right? Which is just roll with the changes, because boy, oh boy, things are changing so fast.
Feels like the early days of Amazon.
Does it? Let me think. Yeah. Okay. Right. So the early days of Amazon, sure, there was like a crackle in the air, right? You felt this sort of electric, something really cool is about to happen, right? I think with AI, it's more of like a big fart. You smell something in the air, and you're like, something's about to happen, right? It's not anywhere near as clean as the internet was. The internet was real obvious. AI is kind of not, in my opinion.
All right. Let's do the rapid fire.
Let's do it.
So, what's something that you wish people would just stop talking about and it's just really overvalued?
I think that it's the whole. I think people need to stop talking about code being the bottleneck, and typing was never the bottleneck, right? Because they're misdirecting the conversation in a direction that is pretty stupid.
So they're just at the wrong level of abstraction.
Mhm, they're talking about the wrong thing. It's like saying, hey, we got a robot soccer team and they're all going out on the field. They just got changed super fast and they're out on the field and they're like, putting on shorts was never the bottleneck, right? And it's like, that's an interesting conversation, but can we not have it?
Yeah.
We're talking about the game.
Yeah, put the ball in the back of the net.
Yeah.
Interesting. What do you think is completely undervalued that nobody is talking about?
Debugging. We just talked about it. We like debuggers, but the newer generation, they don't use debuggers. They use print statements. It's real popular to use print statements.
Well, I mean, if you came up because you took some JavaScript tutorial and you just do some sort of like console.log thing, yeah.
Right.
But
debuggers work better sometimes. But no, just in general, I mean, like, I think that'll be mine.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is something to maybe when you're like on call and there's some issue and you've just been hunting it for days or weeks or months, and then you finally make that breakthrough.
Yeah. I mean, there's people that have that skill. They're like detectives for code, and they can look at it and they can run runtime simulations in their head. I got a buddy, Dominic Cooney, that can do this and just find the bug, right? That's a skill, right? And as you become more and more detached from the code, you're going to have to get better and better and better triangulation skills to figure out where the bugs are and so on. Yeah?
Oh, interesting. Okay, so it's much less like constructive, but more like this unbounded, like how to find the issue.
Sleuthing may be better than debugging.
Yeah. No, that's super interesting because I think everybody is just so fixated on the generation and the creation.
That's right. I believe that there is going to be a new software role that emerges called the fixer. They're going to be the Winston Wolfs that come in when your company screws up a project or system so bad with AI that you just can't get out, and you go pay somebody exorbitant amounts of money to come in and potentially screw it up worse, but hopefully fix it.
Well, I feel like the fixer just makes more money than the maker, almost always.
I think so. Yeah.
It's like that scene from Pulp Fiction.
I mean, literally, you might want to consider that as a career option for yourself. Just go start talking to systems integrators, read about it, talk to AIs, teach yourself what train wrecks are going to happen when companies all adopt AI so that you're ready to come in and be the expert for them, right? Because there will be a set of remedies that you'll be able to take.